publicly saying that the term Chinese New Year is wrong is cultural humiliation and discrimination and is far beyond inclusion. With such a diverse student group at University of Southern California embracing inclusivity, should we just name it University of Southern Inclusivity? Hello everyone, it's Shell here. Today's video is a bit different because I want to talk about something that upsets me a lot recently on social media. So the USC official Instagram account posted publicly on story that the term Chinese New Year is not correct and even crossed the line over the word Chinese. And this half African American and half Vietnamese student explained how Vietnamese have the tradition of celebrating the New Year with red envelopes and family gatherings, stuff like that. I'm not saying that she's not respecting the history and be ignorant as she can, but I do believe that USC students are way more knowledgeable than that. First of all, what is Chinese New Year? It is the most important festival in China throughout the year, when families gather together regardless of the distance. It's also known as Spring Festival, which is the literal translation of its original Chinese term, 春节, and in recent years it became known internationally as Lunar New Year. It marks the first day of the lunisolar calendar, a combination of the solar and lunar calendar, which is based on the moon phase, and 天干地支, a repetitive sexagenary cycle, during which each year is named with a combination of two Chinese characters on the form here. The lunisolar calendar is also called Chinese agricultural calendar. The ritual of celebrating the first day of the Chinese calendar could be traced back to ancient China, to Han Dynasty, which is 202 BC to 220 AD, and continued to evolve throughout the history until 1912, when China adopted the Gregorian calendar and started using both. That was also the time the term Spring Festival was first applied, in avoidance of conflicting with the New Year with the Gregorian calendar. Calling Chinese New Year Lunar New Year is by no means correct because, as we know, an annual cycle on solar calendar is 365 or 366 days, whereas it's 354 days, 8 hours, 48 minutes, and 34 seconds on lunar calendar, which means in 17 years, the first day of the lunar calendar will be in summer. This is also the calendar that Islamic people are using right now. However, the lunisolar calendar guarantees that the lunar calendar will align with the solar calendar and that the first day of its calendar would always lie in January or February. Here are some references for you guys to check out. Always remember to use citations and sources to prove your ideas. So now let's talk about why Koreans and Vietnamese and people from other Southeast Asian countries are also celebrating the Chinese New Year. From the book Traditional Festivals, a Multicultural Encyclopedia, Volume 1, written by Christian Roy, it was said that the New Year's Day of some other Far Eastern cultures, such as Korea's Seoul, Vietnamese Tet, is also celebrated by largely following local versions of Chinese calendar and customs. The Korean New Year, aka Seollnar, was first recorded in Chinese historical work 隋书 and 旧唐书 from China's Sui and Tang Dynasty, approximately 7th century, when Shilla Kingdom was Tang's tributary and adopted the Chinese calendar. It worked with the then Tang royal family and defeated the Baekje Kingdom and became the rival of Goguryeo on the Korean peninsula in 660. This part of the history could be found in Samguk Yusa. It's a Korean book, but it was all written in Chinese. In addition to that, during the Ming Dynasty, the Ming Emperor back then even sent troops to the Joseon Dynasty to defeat the Japanese invasion. So the socio-economic, political, and cultural interaction between the two dynasties was more than common. According to History.com, the celebration of the old Lunar New Year was halted from 1910 to 1945 because of being annexed and colonized by Japan, and in 1989, Lo Tae-woo administration set it as a national holiday and started calling it Korean New Year. Same in Vietnam, the historical relationship between Vietnam and China has been a little bit more complicated. In history, northern Vietnam had gone through 4 periods of Chinese dominance from Han Dynasty 111 BC to Tang Dynasty. This period was when the Chinese cultural wonders and urban planning had influenced Vietnam, including the Chinese constructing roads, waterways, and harbors, bring agriculture cultural tools, classical Chinese writing, celebrating Vietnamese version of the Chinese New Year. The country eventually gained its independence in 968, but went back to Ming Dynasty's dominance in 1407, which ended 20 years later, marking the end of China's ruling over Vietnam. However, Vietnam became the tributary of the Qing dynasty thereafter, but still kept politically independent. It's easy to find that as neighboring countries, the cultural, societal, economic, and political interaction was so normal back then. There's no shame to admitting that cultural influence had happened in your country. What matters is the culture itself and the good it has brought. But distorting history and disrespecting our Chinese culture is never acceptable. We would wish others Happy Lunar New Year because we respect different cultures and respect their history. And it's understandable that throughout history, customs have already localized and evolved. However, publicly saying that the term Chinese New Year is wrong is cultural humiliation and discrimination, and is far beyond inclusion. Saying Lunar New Year is the only correct term is cultural appropriation. We love it when non-Chinese are celebrating the Chinese New Year with us, just like we'd celebrate Christmas even if we're not Christian. At least we're respecting the origin of this festival, just like we wish everyone else would do the same with our festival and holidays. We do not accept the fact that this is the ignorant content posted by the official account of USC. For those of you who can't get why I'm upset right now, let me put it in such an example. The language I'm speaking right now is English. As someone not from the UK, not living in the UK, and just because it's the most widely spoken language in the world, should we call it globalish or worldish? With such a diverse student group at University of Southern California embracing inclusivity, should we just name it University of Southern Inclusivity? So please, read some history and respect history. After all of us would become part of the history, and none of us would want our part to be distorted in the future, right? Thank you. Happy Chinese New Year.